must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must the white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? How many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years can a mountain exist before it's washed to the sea? How many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? How many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man look up before he really sees the sky? How many years must one person have before he can hear people cry? How many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
1968. Memphis sanitation strike. Almost 90% of black men in Memphis were low-paid manual workers. The sanitation workers / trash collectors had been trying to form a union and strike their conditions for a while. They wanted improvements. There was serious danger in their jobs and they were underpaid. This event was part of the civil rights movement because blacks were still being paid less and treated poorly. In February of 1968, 2 sanitation workers died when they were caught in the grinder of their sanitation truck. All the sanitation workers went on strike. This picture I correlated with the lyrics, "How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man?" I correlated this picture with these lyrics because the sanitation men were mostly older and at least in their 50s. They had dealt with years of oppression and were tired and beaten down. Because of their age, they have already traveled so many roads. I think they are striking to show that they finally deserve peace. Lastly, another strong correlation is that the black men are exclaiming they are men. They are defining themselves no differently than the men standing across from them with guns. They are proclaiming that they are no different, and therefore there is no reason their jobs treat them differently. They are simply pointing out their inequality. In 1957, Elizabeth Eckford was part of the Little Rock Nine, who were the first group of African Americans to attend Little Rock Central High School as a result of the integration from the ruling of Brown v. Board. Elizabeth ignores the hostile screams and stares of fellow students on her attempted first day of school. They were blocked from entering by the Arkansas National Guard, and because of this picture and many like it, President Eisenhower sent federal troops to Little Rock. The lyrics that I thought appropriately align with this picture are, "How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand?" I thought this lyric correlated because the Little Rock Nine had to try multiple ways for various seas to sail or get to the school. It took a couple tries until they were successful and could comfortably sleep in the sand at school. In 1963, protesters were protesting the segregation laws that were still taking place in Birmingham, Alabama. The 17-year-old boy was attacked by the officer's dog while doing nothing but being a peaceful protester. The song lyrics I chose in collaboration with this picture is, "Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned?" I thought this lyric directly complimented this picture because the black people are peacefully protesting but still being injured and attacked by the police. So it makes you wonder, how long will citizens be injured before it isn't allowed? In August 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. waves to supporters from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during the March on Washington. The March on Washington was a huge protest which included over 250,000 people protesting the injustices and oppression still occurring against people of color. This is also where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech on August 28, 1963. The lyrics that closely correlated to this image are, "Yes, and how many years can a mountain exist before it's washed to the sea?" I thought this lyric was appropriate because African Americans had been emancipated from slavery for at least a century by this point, yet they were still facing inequality, still having to march, and still having to fight. So how much longer could this mountain of racism and oppression exist before being washed away and existing complete equality? In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King arrived in Birmingham, Alabama to lead a civil disobedience demonstration against the businesses in the downtown area. Dr. King was arrested and the picture is his mugshot. From Birmingham jail is where Dr. King wrote his famous letter. Dr. King famously wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." The song lyrics I correlated with this picture are, "Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free?" I thought this lyric was appropriate because at the time, Dr. King was in jail and the furthest from the definition of free. On a deeper level, the lyric expresses the same frustration Dr. King writes about in his letter. When they will be free, and by free he means equal and no longer afraid. In 1961, the bus incident in Birmingham takes place. In this picture, a racist group, the KKK, meets the Freedom Riders at the Birmingham bus station. The head of the Birmingham police, Bull Connor, had made an agreement with the Ku Klux Klan that the police would stay away from the bus terminal for 15 minutes. In that 15 minutes, the KKK members severely beat the Freedom Riders who were headed to the march on Washington. The beatings put the Freedom Riders in the hospital for a few days. The lyrics I chose for this image are the part that says, "Yes, and how many times can a man turn his head?" and pretending that he just doesn't see. I thought this lyric line was appropriate because this is the exact action that all the bystanders present in the photo did, as well as the head of Birmingham police, Bull Connor. He was allowing the abuse to go on. He was turning his head and pretending it wasn't happening. I believe a lot of this type of apathy led the civil rights era to last longer. On October 17, 1968, at the Olympics in Mexico, American Olympians Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised their gloved fists in the Black Power salute to express their opposition to racism back home during the U.S. national anthem after receiving their medals for first and third in the men's 200-meter race. The lyric line I chose for this picture is the part that says, "Yes, and how many times must a man look up before he can see the sky?" I thought these lyrics perfectly matched because these men had to go through so much and persevere in so many areas to get into the Olympics, let alone win. I believe these men being able to raise their hand in opposition to the oppression taking place at home while claiming their Olympic victory shows they are able to stand up and see the sky in a sense. In 1964, United States President Lyndon B. Johnson signs into law the historic Civil Rights Act in a nationally televised ceremony at the White House. The Civil Rights Act prohibited racial discrimination in employment and education and outlawed racial segregation in public places such as schools, buses, parks, and swimming pools. For this image, I correlated the lyrics, "Yes, and how many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry?" I chose this lyric line because the civil rights movement had been going on for over a decade at this point. More than one president was aware of what was taking place and action still was not taken right away. On April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. Civil rights leader Andrew Young and others standing on the balcony of Memphis Lorraine Motel pointed in the direction of the then unknown assailant just after the bullet struck Martin Luther King Jr., who was lying at their feet. Ultimately, Dr. King died from his wounds. I chose the lyric line, "Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died?" This lyric line correlated perfectly with the image of Dr. King being assassinated. Already too many black people had died in the plight for equal rights, but Dr. King's assassination after gaining more equality for black people was tragic. Overall, I believe this was a great song for Bob Dylan to write in 1962. It came out right in the middle of the civil rights movement, especially when it was gaining momentum. The fact that he says few words and leaves it open for a lot of interpretation makes it interesting to hear the different opinions on what something he says might mean to different people. The title, Blowin' in the Wind, to me, means it is something that is hard to catch. Equality, rights, and respect all exist, but for certain minorities, they are blown in the wind, so it isn't really known if they will ever catch them or gain these rights.